And you are aware that Ms. Winter generated approximately 3 articles per week.
which was the right amount, but she was still struggling.
So, but you would agree now that based on your experience in communications, that the number of clicks Ms. Winter's articles received would have generated revenue for TBD.
She would have generated a decent profit, but still the likes and shares also indicate a profit. Since they're being shared with multiple people, it indicates a larger profit, more people see them.
And likes and shares do need to get clicked on, don't they, Ms. Vogel?
Yes, but she wasn't sharing, articles of hers weren't being shared as often as the other writers were.
And is there a significant difference between the average number of shares and Ms. Winter's shares?
Yes,
Now, you are aware that TBD did terminate Ms. Winter,
of course.
right? And you are aware that based on those company averages, there were writers that ranked lower than Ms. Winter.
Yes,
And you are aware that Ms. Winter was terminated, yet writers with lower averages were not.
Miss Winter was ranked in the bottom third, so she was struggling, and Ms. Shaw gave her a decent amount of time to adapt.
But to clarify, there were writers that had lower averages than did Ms. Winter,
Not many,
and they were not terminated, were they?
no?
Now, the only conclusion you were able to make for this case was that it would be understandable why TBD would terminate Ms. Winter on the basis of her performance.
Yes, I was only able to conclude on her performance and nothing else.
And you have only reviewed Ms. Winter's performance,
Yes.
and you have not reviewed the performance of other writers within TBD.
No, that's not what I was asked to look for.
Permission to approach and retrieve Exhibit 22. Permission to publish Exhibit 22 to the jury. And with that, I have no further questions for Ms. Vogel.
Brief redirect, Your Honor. Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with Exhibit 22. Dr. Vic Vogel, did you read Riley Winter's deposition in today's case?
I didn't.
Were you aware of how much Riley Winter was getting paid?
I was.
How much was she getting paid?
200,000.
Now, was that higher than the average writer?
It was. She was the highest paid writer.
Now, Dr. Vic Vogel, was Miss Winter the highest producing click in that document?
She was. She was ranked third, which is pretty decent.
Was she the highest share?
No.
Was she competitive among her peers?
In clicks, yes. In everything else, she was lacking significantly.
And you were aware that she was the highest paid writer at TBD?
Yes, I was.
And yet she wasn't the highest within her clicks and shares?
That is correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions. Permission to retrieve the document, Your Honor. And Your Honor, if there is no recross, I ask that my witness be excused from stand.
No recross, Your Honor.
At this time, the defense calls Ms. Sawyer Shaw to stand. May I proceed? Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Sawyer Shaw.
Good evening, Ms. Shaw, and what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm currently the CEO of 3 companies, one of those being TBD.
Now, before we talk about TBD, tell us a little bit about your background.
I'm from Palo Alto, California. I attended Corinthian Prep there on a scholarship. Based on my time at Corinthian Prep and my work in extracurriculars and my grades, I was able to get a scholarship to Stanford.
And what did you study at Stanford?
At Stanford, I studied business with focus on mass communications. I was there for about a year before I decided to leave.
Why did you decide to leave?
In the business school at Stanford, we were assigned a project to come up with a business model that in turn we could potentially turn into an actual business. My business, Gel Inc., I decided to make into an actual business, and it started receiving attention from people who were willing to put money behind it
why did you decide to buy TBD?
Well, I have no professional journalism background. I've always been interested in journalism. I studied mass communications for a bit at Stanford. I'm also interested in how modern journalism is adapting to meet the market's needs. In a globalizing community, it's that much more important that we are connected and informed about each other. So there was that aspect that encouraged me to buy TBD. And from a business point of view, I saw a lot of things had done TBD well in its past, but we're now hurting it. And I thought that I could save the company and save the jobs.
And how could you do this, Michelle? What were your immediate changes?
In order to save TBD from going completely under, and it was risky that it was likely that that would happen, I needed to make 3 immediate changes.
And what were those 3 immediate changes?
One change is that I had to institute a reduction in force in order to save any jobs at all. The second was that we needed to switch from print to digital media, and the third was that we needed to seek advertisers if we were going to be an all online service.
Okay, so let's take this step by step, and let's start with the print to digital aspect. Why did you do this, and why was it necessary?
Well, print media is far too costly. Further than that, most, if not all, culture magazines are online, so we need to be able to be competitive with other magazines. And more than that, I had noticed that TBD's readership, its print readership was shrinking rapidly, and that its online branch was not getting enough attention in order to attract advertisers. So if we were going to gain more revenue in order to support salaries, we needed to move to digital.
Okay, let's talk about the second step, the reduction in force. What was TBD's reduction in force like?
TBD's reduction in force, honestly, was very quick. I fired 40% of the full-time staff and 60% of the part-time staff, and I fired 12 writers that day.
And how did you make your decision on the reduction in force?
I met with Ms. Perez, TBD's editor-in-chief, and I met with Ms. Martin in order to make my decisions. And they gave me reports so that I could make my decision.
What were included in these reports?
Lots of factors, things like writing sample from the writers, their experience with TBD, their educational background. I relied heavily on the reports that they gave me. I'm pretty hands-off with TBD, so I trusted them.
You mentioned beforehand that this RIF needed to be conducted quickly. Why is that?
In a perfect world, I would have looked at each writer for a day. That's what they deserved. But TBD did not have that kind of time. So if I was going to save any jobs at all, it needed to be quick. And a long and drawn-out reduction of force would have been painful for the entire staff. So I needed to be able to make my decisions quickly. And I was able to do that because of the trustworthy reports provided by Perez and Martin.
Now let's talk about your third step, which was advertising. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Sure, if we were going to be digital, that meant that we could provide our services for free to anyone. And in order to make that possible, we needed to have funding from advertisers. So I sought to establish a partnership with an old friend of mine, Adrian Edwards, who's the CEO of a major music company called Turntable. Turntable is kind of like Pandora or Spotify, and I thought that since TBD's image is something that I wanted, or TBD's image was similar to that of Turntable, I thought we could set up a successful partnership.
And was this partnership successful?
Oh yes, by the end of near 2015, Turntable was contributing about $250,000 a month to in advertising.
You mentioned before that the image mattered between advertisers and TBD. How did you establish this image?
Well, advertisers are very concerned about the image of the company that they're going into business with. In order to attract and maintain relationships with advertisers, we needed to make sure that our image could attract the younger demographic. The younger demographic is so important because they're so frequently competed for, their attention is so competed for by culture magazines, and they're the most sought after demographic by advertisers. So if we wanted to maintain relationships with advertisers, we needed to appeal to this younger demographic. And so in doing that, our image needed to be trendy and fresh.
And in changing this demographic, how did you expect your writers to change? What did you expect from your writers?
Well, like I said, image is very important if we were going to attract advertisers. In order for the writers to meet my expectations in maintaining this image, they needed the ability to go viral. They needed to have a noteworthy online presence. They needed to interact in the office with each other. I mean, we all talk about culture magazines, it's part of our life, so they need to know what's happening now.
And you mentioned going viral. Can you explain why that's so important to TBD?
Going viral means that we have more eyes on us than we did before. So
others that were not living up to the standard?
Yes, Miss Winter failed to meet my expectations repeatedly.
Why did you fire Riley Winter?
It was part because she could not adapt to these expectations I established, and probably the last straw was when she criticized our major advertiser Turntable in an article.
Now, tell us about this article, Turntable. When was it published?
The article was published mid-December. She was calling out Turntable, saying that it was a lesser way of discovering music as opposed to talking to your friends, and since Turntable is our major
Objection.
advertiser.
Facts not in evidence.
How do you respond?
I am happy to admit this evidence if it is necessary.
It is, your objection is sustained.
Would you recognize this article as brought forth for you today?
Yes.
Permission to refer to post counsel? Permission to report to witness with the same? Michelle, what have I just handed you?
This is Miss Winter's article about Turntable.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
At this time, the defense moves what has been previously marked as exhibit 10 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Yes, granted.
Now, regarding this article, Michelle, how did the advertiser Turntable react?
Adrian Edwards was furious. I was provided an ultimatum. I either fire Miss Winter.
Objection, hearsay.
Your response?
Michelle has not made an out-of-court statement. She has simply provided a circumstance that was provided before her. She has not made a direct quote about what has been said by any witness or person not in the courtroom today.
Your response?
Your Honor, the witness